Phil, you've traveled all over the U.S., right? You've seen a lot of different churches. You've spoken with a lot of different congregations. I imagine also the diversity of denomination would probably be included in there as well. Is there something that, and I mean, if there's no answer here, that's fine. Is there some sort of like common thread that you keep finding happening within these churches that may be something that we could like talk about here on the pod for our listeners that like could be the thing that you would walk into the church and the first thing you'd be like, this is one more church that's dealing with exactly this problem.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. I think a couple things. One is everybody's trying to do the same thing and everybody's searching for a unicorn to do it all. So the church of 50 or 500 or 5,000 or 50,000 all pretty much are trying to pull off the same things. Like they're pulling up, and now with the culture of comparison, they're looking at Instagram and YouTube and comparing themselves not to the church down the road, but the church across the country that is pulling off something different with a very different culture, different budget, all the things. So everybody's trying to do the same thing, and everybody's looking for a unicorn in the way of the expectation is, well, with the expectations we have so high, we're the best church in the community. We're the best church in this area of the country. Surely there's more people out there. And honestly, like there may be a couple unicorns out there. And that's especially in the work with Slingshot Group that I do, helping great churches and organizations find and hire great leaders like that. Everybody describes a unicorn because that's what they need. The funny part about it though, is that the person, and I'm guilty of it. I'm not knocking anybody because I understand, because we all want, we want the best. Yeah. But we're usually describing somebody that is just maybe a tick below Jesus and quite a few ticks above what we are on our best day, and so it's like, that's a thing that it kind of fits to that level of excellence that scares me, that I think we've got to give some people a shot. And the best, the people that you aspire to, some at one point were the 25-year-old version of them that probably you wouldn't be willing to hire and give a chance. And when I think about what Jesus did, he didn't hire the experts to be his disciples. He actually were like, hey, you're jacked up. I got a place for you, come on along. And diverse team, bunch of different kind of backgrounds, but he built something special with his disciples. And I think we can do the same when we give people a chance and actually give them the resources and the trust to say, hey, you can be a part of this. So I think those are a couple things that I'm seeing for sure, big and small, all across the country, regardless of denomination or size.
Man,
the first half of that answer, you mentioned that every church is trying to do the same thing. How do you feel about that thing? Do you think it's working? That thing?
Now you're going to get me in trouble, Caleb.
I'm curious if the thing is working.
Caleb hasn't woken.
Phil got the list of questions we were going to ask before this. He knew that there's going to be Q&A at the end, but he didn't realize that the three of us were going to be asking the most difficult questions.
I'm just curious.
I like it. I wrestle with that, Caleb. I really do. Yeah, I don't want to assume that. I mean, I think there are some trends and some things that we can just learn from because they work.
Sure.
That's not, and that we can celebrate that. What scares me is when somebody's trying to do the same thing instead of a God thing. And I think when it turns into, I'm chasing what somebody else's vision was for their church and their community to copy and replicate that because I resonate with it, but they're looking right past the people in their community that God's called them to reach and their community with their needs, and are choosing their preference and their personal, their convictions, their heart, what they want over what God's called them to, and stuff. And I get like that's a tension I think we probably all, feel and deal with, no doubt. There's some format and there's some things that I think are going to hit a shelf life that 10 years from now, we're going to look back and say, oh, bless our hearts. Like, no doubt. Yeah. I think we're seeing that, but I think we got to authentically chase what God's calling us to in our season and our location. And I think do it authentically. Don't try to be or look like what you aspire to. aspire to accomplish what God's calling you to and be you, because he knows what he's doing. Right. We don't have to put fancy packaging on something that ain't fancy.
Look at that response. Well played.
There are very few things that would get me more disheartened taking on a project, a branding project, a marketing project for a church than them coming with like, hey, this is this other church that's 3 miles away that did exactly the event that we're doing. This is everything that they did. Use this as like your main source. Like my brain falls out of my head every time. But it's so common of churches constantly, they are doing the same thing. They're chasing whatever worked for churches, sometimes in completely different contexts with completely different communities. And what works for them is not going to work for you. And you have a unique calling to a unique group of people. And we'll need to find a unique way of reaching them. And communication.
We're really renting somebody's vision when we do that.
Yeah.
We're just renting it.
You're right.
It's like instead of and robbing ourselves of what God can actually do through us, and honestly, I think people are realizing it, and they're getting like, it's just not going to get you as far as what you think it's going to get you and stuff. And I think we're seeing plenty of stories and plenty of leaders collapsing, realizing that the house that they tried to build, they don't even want to live in, and it's collapsing around them, so we got work to do.